Hello everyone, bringing you a video today which is another in the series I've been making looking at recreations of British and Commonwealth soldiers serving in Korea during the Korean War. In this video we're skipping forward to 1953 and we're catching up with the 3rd Battalion of the Royal Australian Regiment, once again 3RAR, this being Australia's primary ground forces commitment to the Korean War, and by this point very much part of the British Commonwealth Division. Now this meant that the troops of 3RAR had access to British stores, and by 1953 they were equipped with British cold weather clothing, the combat uniform, and British web equipment as well. And we'll see that as we look at the recreation here. There's a mix of Australian and British kit, but actually British kit dominates, and we'll have a look at that now in some detail. Looking at this overview of the recreation, you can see that a good amount of the kit here, a good amount of the uniform and equipment is of British origin, but there are Australian elements to this, and obviously we'll talk about that more as we look at the various elements in more detail. Before looking at the uniform and equipment in more detail, we'll first of all have a look at the weapon which is being carried here, and that is the Rifle No. 1 Mark III Star. Now Australia didn't introduce the No. 4 to replace or supplement and then replace the No. 1 Mark III Star, so Australia transferred directly from the Rifle No. 1 Mark III Star to the SLR, the L1A1 at the end of the 1950s. So we still have that older design of rifle here. The first part of the uniform we'll look at is a very distinctive piece of Australian uniform, which is of course the slouch hat. You can see that here worn brim down, and in this instance a puggaree is worn. In a previous video looking at a recreation of a member of 3RAR early in the war, the puggaree was omitted, but in this instance I've included that. As I say, certainly photographs I've looked at from this time period seem to show the puggaree worn more generally, and I have therefore included it here. Basic uniform consists of British combat clothing, and the fighting in Korea had essentially prompted the introduction of the combat uniform, which had been trialled previously in the late 1940s. We can see here the smock combat sateen, which is a later development of this. The initial smock was introduced in a gabardine cloth, and this is a slightly later example. Still Korean War issue, but manufactured in sateen cloth rather than gabardine. And you can see there are 4 external pockets here. A British khaki flannel wool shirt is also worn. The trousers are the 1952 pattern, and these are also made in sateen cloth. And you can just see there's a dressing pocket on the right leg, the wearer's right leg. You can just see the bottom of that poking out from under the hem of the jacket. And on the left leg, the wearer's left leg, there is a map pocket. A distinctive feature of the 1952 pattern trousers can just be seen, which is an external buttoned weather flap which closes over the fly. And you can just see the bottom of that here poking out from under the jacket. The web equipment is the 1944 pattern. Now this was essentially standard for British troops in Korea at this time, and was also issued to other troops in the British Commonwealth Division, Australian troops being one example of this. The equipment is worn in a slightly modified configuration. We can see at the front here the 2 basic pouches or ammunition pouches, and you can see on the left hand pouch, as you're looking at it here, there are loops on the side which are designed to secure a bayonet, a short bayonet such as the spike bayonet for the No. 4. Obviously the bayonet for the Rifle No. 1 Mark III Star, which we're going to have a look at in just a moment, will not fit here. This pouch is actually supposed to be worn on the other side, so that the bayonet is essentially on the left hip or just above the left hip. It's not uncommon to see in photographs of Australian troops using the equipment that they've actually swapped the pouches around so these loops are in the middle, and therefore less likely to snag. That's one possibility for configuring the equipment in this manner. Another interesting detail here is the strap, which is actually part of the haversack, which we'll have a look at in just a moment. This strap loops around the chest, and in theory at least is supposed to be looped through small loops which are sewn onto the upper part of the back of the basic pouches. This is a real faff, and although photographs do show Australian troops using this strap, which is fairly unusual in itself, they've not bothered to do this, and the strap has just been looped up over the chapes for the buckles on the back of the pouch. The purpose of the strap is to further secure the haversack on the back and also provide upper support for the basic pouches, which obviously carry quite a heavy ammunition load. And in this configuration it does that job. It helps to support the top of the pouches without the faff of looping it through the loops sewn to the back of the pouches. Looking round on the left hip, we can see the aforementioned bayonet for the rifle, and you can see that the 1907 pattern sword bayonet, which we have here, would definitely not fit comfortably in the loops on the side of the pouches, so it's being carried in the separate frog, which was also introduced as part of the 1944 pattern web equipment. Some people believe this was primarily for use when the equipment was worn in drill order, but really it seems that the logic behind this was that it could be used to carry bayonets which wouldn't fit in the loops on the side of the pouch, such as this example here. And in the campaign for which the 1944 pattern web equipment was designed, many men would probably still have been using the Rifle No. 1 Mark III Star, and indeed in actual use, as you can see here. With Australian troops being issued the equipment, they made use of the separate frog here to carry the bayonet for the Rifle No. 1 Mark III Star. Around on the back, the haversack is carried, and you can see that here, with two outer pockets, each designed to take one half of the oblong mess tins, and then a main waterproof compartment. And then you can see beneath this, the poncho is carried, the 1944 pattern poncho, strapped underneath the haversack using the straps designed for this purpose. And beneath this, hanging from the belt, we have the water bottle carrier, and this contains, of course, the aluminium water bottle and cup, which nest together, very similar to US practice. Another feature taken from US practice is the use of M1910 style hanger hooks, which allow the carrier to be suspended beneath the belt as we see here. The final thing to look at is, of course, footwear, and we have here a pair of British cold wet weather boots, and these are the boots which were designed for the conditions in Korea. They have a large toe box, allowing extra pairs of socks to be worn. They include a mesh insole, and they have a heavy cleated rubber sole, essentially the same Ithside commando sole used on SV boots during the Second World War. And these are worn in combination with Australian 3-buckle leggings or gaiters, and these are somewhat based on American practice in form, the height and so forth, but they fasten in a very different manner. They fasten under the boot using a leather strap. The edge of the gaiter then clips together using a metal tongue which slots into a slot at the base of the gaiter next to the buckle for the strap passing under the foot, and then there are two straps further up which secure the legging or gaiter around the leg. So as you can see, this primarily consists of British uniform and kit, which was common for 3RAR by this point, but obviously you have the Australian headdress, and in this instance the Australian leggings or gaiters in use as well. You do also see anklets and occasionally puttees in use as well, and headwear would vary as well. The Australians seem to have quite liked the British combat cap, which was part of the combat uniform, and in certain instances helmets would also be worn when on patrol as well. But this is a recreation of a fairly typical setup for men of 3RAR around the spring of 1953. So there we are. I hope you found it interesting looking at this. As I say, the recreation here in the video based on photographs of 3RAR taken around the spring of 1953. And this of course shows the British kit which Australian troops in Korea had been issued by this point. I do hope you found it interesting, as I've already said. If you have and you'd like to see more of this sort of thing going forward, there will of course be more of these videos looking at recreations of British Commonwealth troops in Korea coming up soon, all being well. If you'd like to see those, please do consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And whether you're newly subscribing or you've previously subscribed, please do make sure you hit the little bell, the little notification button down below, and that will of course alert you when I upload future videos. If you really like my uploads and you would like to support the channel, you can. Both Patreon and PayPal are linked down below. And as ever, a massive thank you to everybody who supports me using those two methods. It's greatly appreciated, as I always say. Thank you all very much indeed. If you'd like to follow the channel on social media, you can. Facebook, Instagram and Twitter are all linked down below, and there will of course be photographs of this posted up over there as well. And if you'd like to get in touch with me but you don't really use social media, there is of course an email address down in the description as well. That's everything for this video, so until next time, bye for now.